Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our November 2020 Third Tuesday at 3 webcast series event, where we're covering our Google Workspace action plan. My name is Alan Falcon. I'm the CEO and Pragmatic Evangelist here at Cumulus Global, and I want to thank you for joining us here, taking time out of your busy day or busy week. I also want to thank those who are viewing this as the recording off our website post-live event. Thank you for doing that. A couple of housekeeping items, as always, before we jump right into things. First and foremost, you'll notice that your audio is muted. We do this to prevent any unnecessary background noise from interfering. So at any point in the time you have a comment or a question, you'll notice along the right hand side or top of your screen, there's some icons. One of them opens the questions window in our GoToWebinar service here. Please open that window and ask your questions there. I get a flag, so I get a prompt that a question's been asked. And I can track which questions I've answered so that we make sure we cover everything, and we will stay on at the end. We have plenty of time for Q&A. Also, this session is being recorded, so for folks who registered and couldn't make it, we'll send the recording. We'll send it out to all of you who are here live as well. Feel free to forward and share this with others who you think might find the content valuable. On the topic of Google Workspace, we have some other events and resources happening that might be of interest to you. We've got some initial blog posts up. We'll be adding more blog posts this week and next on the topic and on the action plan and transition. Also on our website, we've got a great overview page for Google Workspace that sort of focuses down all of the information that Google's putting out there, as well as a simplified version comparison that you can use. This webcast recording will be in that section of our website as well. And as always, if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to us and we'll set up a call with one of our cloud advisors who can assess your current situation, your current use of G Suite, and discuss which Google Workspace plan or plans are best for you. So with that said, let's dive right in. And obviously the center of attention here is the fact that, after more than, well, actually almost 12 years on the market now, or more than 12 years on the market, Google is moving to a new subscription model for what's formerly known as G Suite, what's now Google Workspace. This really does provide more subscription options. Google's intent here is to match the features and the costs to your business needs in 4 key areas: collaboration, storage, security and compliance, and management and reporting. And so as you move up the cost or up the tiers and subscriptions, if you will, you'll find that you'll have more features in each of those 4 areas. At also different price points. The other thing that's pretty special about what's happened here is there are now 2 subscription tiers. So there's the business tier with multiple subscription options, primarily designed for small and mid-sized businesses, those with 1 to 300 active users. And then you have the enterprise tier, which is for larger organizations or smaller organizations that need the enterprise features. And so we're going to walk through and sort of start today by covering a little bit of the details in the new subscription model, and then we'll talk about the migration paths. Where are you now with G Suite, and where might you go? Where do you want to be in Google Workspace, and what are the implications there? So we talk about the subscription tiers, we talk about business and enterprise, and at a high level, the differences are as follows, which is, first in the user count. The business tier is designed for companies with up to 300 users, whereas enterprise is any number of users. There are 3 subscription models within business tier: standard, standard, and plus. Enterprise has 2 primary subscription models, standard and plus. There's also an enterprise essentials, which is fundamentally for larger organizations with deskless workers. So if you are in a manufacturing business and you've got knowledge workers in the office space and folks on the floor who don't really need the full suite, you've got that enterprise essential license, which is limited functionality. So we're not going to cover it in much detail here. The other comment I'll make about users is that 12/31 is a big deadline. If your business has more than 300 users and you want to move to Google Workspace at the business tier, you can do so on a single license or single tier, if you will, or single subscription, excuse me, if you do so before December 31st. And we'll talk about that December 31st deadline because it has some other implications as well. The other major difference between business and enterprise tiers is that with enterprise, you have unlimited storage as well as Google Vault. In the business tier, you only have Google Vault and the Business Plus subscription, and your user storage is 30 gigabytes, 2 terabytes, or 5 terabytes, respectively, for the Starter, Standard, and Plus licenses. Note that your storage, however, for Business Standard and Business Plus, that's pooled storage. So no one user is limited to 2 or 5 terabytes. You take the number of users you have. So if you have a 10 user setup and you go with Business Plus, that gives you 10 times 5 or 50 terabytes that's shared among all your users. And yes, one of those users could easily have 49 terabytes with the remaining terabyte shared among the other 9. Additionally, you have tiered features. In the business, most of the tiering is in the area of Drive, Chat, Meet, and Vault, those services, as well as security management. You also have tiered features with respect to security and data protection in reports and application integration when you get to the enterprise. And so there are some differences, and we'll walk through, starting with business in the blue here, some of the key features and some of the key differences. And the ones that we see, here most concerned about is actually storage. And for the vast majority of our customers, the limitation on storage, particularly because the Standard and Plus subscriptions, the storage is pooled, is not going to be a factor for you. Right, it's going to be that 2 terabyte per user pooled or 5 terabyte per user pooled will be more than enough. For folks who are on G Suite Basic who might move to the Starter, that 30 gig per user might be a limit. One thing that we're waiting for clarification from Google on, and we'll post this on a blog post as soon as we do, is what happens with the digital storage licenses. It's our understanding that Google is going to phase out additional storage licenses, which means that if you have users who have more than 30 gig right now on G Suite Basic, you would need a mix of Business Starter and Business Standard licensing under Google Workspace. Now, the good news is within the business tier and within the enterprise tier, you can mix and match licenses to meet your needs. And that does simplify things with respect to tracking licensings and add-ons versus just having different subscription licenses based on needs. Another major difference between Starter, Standard, and Plus is with meets and attendees. This is the one that gets the press, and that you go from 100 up to 250 participants. And with Standard and Plus, you can record your meetings to Google Drive. In Docs, many people don't realize this, so I'm highlighting it up front, that you have the ability to custom brand documents, templates, and form templates in both the Standard and Plus editions. That's a feature that's powerful, but seldom used across many of our customers, so we want to promote it here. And as I mentioned earlier, Business Plus has Vault. The other subscriptions within the business tier do not. And then you have different levels of security management and endpoint manage, moving from basic up to enhanced and advanced with the Plus edition. When we go into a little bit more detail with Google Meets, let me go back here because I just saw we have a question. Question is, does the storage amount include email storage? Yes. The storage amount includes email, documents, and photos. And so all 3 types of storage within the Google Workspace environment come under those pools or those per user limits. So let me move forward again, back, take a little deeper look at Google Meets. You'll see that, and there are a couple here that are highlighted in green. What you have today in Google Meets is you have the ability to record to Drive. You have the ability to do polling and Q&A tied to your Google Meet. And those are both available in the Standard and Plus editions, but not in the Starter edition. Coming soon, we've been advised that you will also have moderation controls, the ability for individuals in a Google Meet to raise their hands, the ability to move people into breakout rooms, and if you're on Google Workspace Business Plus, to do automatic attendance tracking. Noise cancellation is a feature that exists and is expected to be enhanced coming soon. That is only available at the enterprise tiers. Another app with a lot of differentiation between Starter and the higher licenses of Standard and Plus within the business tier is Chat and the new chat functionality. And again, this is this is a relatively new feature in and of itself with the release of Google Chat several months ago. In addition to the Hangouts, the chat functionality in your Gmail inbox screen that you're used to over in the left or right panel, you can now go to chat.google.com and get a more robust chat with both individual chats and the ability to create chat rooms. And so all three versions will have team messaging, but the ability to set a default history status, to auto-accept invites, or to chat with people outside your domain are limited to the standard and plus. Okay, I see we have some additional questions. I'll jump in here and get those answered before moving forward. So, and these actually go back to the storage. So let me go back a couple slides so you can see the storage. So do shared drive storage count towards the per user total, or is it part of the pool total? So shared drive storage goes towards your pooled total as well. And this actually, from a technical and administrative standpoint, simplifies things so that you know that if you have, again, 10 users and you're running this time Google Workspace Business Standard, that you have 20 terabytes of storage that's in each. That covers all of your inboxes, your calendars, each and every user's My Drive, as well as all of the space in shared drives. And if someone else is asking, how can we tell which version you're on? You can tell by looking in the admin console. If you're not sure how to do that, just send an email to service@cumulusglobal.com. We'll look it up, or we'll let you know. We've got that in our records as well. The next question is, will these subscription changes affect G Suite for education institutions? If so, how? So G Suite for education has undergone a different transformation that is not covered under the Google Workspace transition yet, although at some point in the not too distant future it might be. We haven't heard anything definitive that from Google. For G Suite for education, there's two versions. There is the G Suite for education, which is generally equivalent to the current G Suite business SKU or licensing. And then there's G Suite Enterprise for education, and which is mostly equivalent to the current G Suite Enterprise application. At this point, we've been given no timeline as to if or when the education offerings, which are available to many nonprofits as well, would move into the Google Workspace branding and structure model. As I've mentioned, there's a question, can a domain have a mix of starter, standard, and plus accounts? Yes. We can mix and match business starter, business standard, and business plus accounts, so long as the total number of accounts remain below that 300 user threshold. If we go above the 300 user threshold, we cannot mix and match. It's a sort of a special offer, or migration or transition offer that Google's made between now and the end of the year. Similarly, with the enterprise space, there are two tiers. You can mix and match users between those two tiers. And so that, I believe, answers all the questions we have to date. I've covered chat. Let me move forward a little bit. And we covered some of the differences within Google Workspace Business. I want to do the same thing with Google Workspace Enterprise, starting to talk about the whole concept around the enterprise license is really adding value. And there's value added in several different areas that we'll talk about within Gmail, within email delivery, which is sort of the back end, inbound, outbound, what email can be processed and how. There's some added value within Docs and Drives, within Meet. Google Workspace Enterprise includes cloud search, which gives you effectively the power of the Google search engine across all of your internal and secure content. Many differences with respect to advanced security management and compliance controls, as well as the option for enhanced or enterprise level support from Google, in addition to the admin and support services that we offer here at Cumulus Global. And so we look at Workspace Enterprise, these are additional capabilities with respect to security and protection by version, such as collaboration with external domains. You can have trusted outside domains, password monitoring and strength control, data loss prevention, not just for email based on content and purpose and context, but for Drive as well. It comes with Cloud Identity Premium, so you can use Google as your identity provider. You have the ability to set up context-aware access to information, which is based on identity and policy, as well as in the Enterprise Plus edition, you have geolocation for data, which means you can determine where, in which country, in which region your data is stored. This is particularly useful here in the US for folks with very specific government requirements or specific requirements to ensure that data stays within the United States. For our customers in Canada, it works the same with respect to your concerns over the US Patriot Act and access to data. The Enterprise Plus edition also comes with a full security center that lets you monitor, manage, address, and resolve security threats and security incidents. So within the apps themselves, there's some differences in Gmail. In the Enterprise edition, including multiple addresses per user, addresses across multiple domains that are active, the ability to create mailing lists, both admin controlled and user controlled, and then in the Enterprise Plus edition, there's support for S and S-MIME encryption, as well as it includes a higher level of advanced threat protection, which is attachment malware detection via sandboxing. So inbound emails with the Enterprise Plus edition get put into a sandbox where the attachments are open and scanned for viruses and malware before being quarantined or sent to a user's inbox. And so with the Enterprise Plus edition, you mitigate much of the need for third-party advanced threat protection tools covering your inbound email. With respect to email delivery, with Google Workspace Enterprise, both editions, you can set up a catch-all address. You have the ability to do email routing for split and dual delivery. This is a little more sophisticated than what's currently there within the G Suite domain. You can run inbound and outbound gateways, as well as an outbound relay server for other applications. And something that's relatively new, you can receive email from multiple POP addresses, where right now it's hard to do that within the G Suite environment. So there's some added capabilities there. When we look at, again, within the apps, within Google Drive and the Google editors, you've got much more advanced drive sharing permissions. You've got tools now that you can use to manage document approval. So there's some basics for document workflows and management. You can manage drive metadata, meaning you can add custom labels as well as metadata fields that can make it easier to categorize, search, and manage documents. You can turn automatic doc creation on and off. And within Enterprise Plus, you've got a new tool, which is Connected Sheets, which lets you connect data across Google Sheets. So currently, you can reference data on multiple sheets within a Google workbook or within a Google worksheet with multiple tabs for each sheet. With Enterprise Plus, you can cross-reference data and connect data across multiple sheet documents and multiple worksheets, not just the tabs within each spreadsheet. So question is the mailing list still just Google Group, or is it a separate tool? My understanding is that this is a separate tool specific to better management of mail lists. It may run on some of the Google Group's infrastructure and share part of the interface, but it is meant to provide a better resource for mailing lists. And it's more about mail merge and those types of activities than it is just straight distribution lists, which tend to be more of an inbound construct. Typically, larger organizations want to do more reporting and have more logging of activity. And so in the enterprise space, you've got additional features with respect to usage trends, audit logs, and advanced drive audits and reports. The enterprise edition in both licenses in the enterprise to also let you export your report data to BigQuery for further analysis. And you have access transparency logs for admin activities. So you can track what your admins are doing, who's doing what, when, how, and why. And then with Enterprise Plus, you've got work insight reports for users. This lets you get down to the user level to look at individual productivity, which tools they're using, how often, frequency, intensity, document creation, collaboration events, things of that nature, to give you a fairly good sense. And again, being able to feed that into BigQuery for analysis can help you assess and manage productivity of your knowledge workers. Finally, we get to pricing, and this is probably a significant concern for many of you. It's a concern for us which is why we're trying to be proactive in our communications in reaching out to all of our current G Suite customers to address the issue of cost, right? So the price being shown, the first row is monthly per user monthly fees. The second row is annual fees. And as a reference point, G Suite Basic is $6 per user per month. That equates to the Business Starter Edition. G Suite Business equates to the Google Workspace Business Plus edition in functionality, but the Business Standard Edition in price. And I'll get into that in a few moments. And the G Suite Enterprise Edition at $25 per user per month sort of falls between the Enterprise Standard and the Enterprise Plus Edition. So the question is, given where you're at now, and again, this is all list pricing, so it doesn't reflect any existing promotional pricing you may have or contract term commitments. Where do you go given where you're at? And so we're going to take a look at the migration paths. Although I'll pause to see, are there any additional questions about the product or the features or sort of the differentiation between the two levels? Okay, so not seeing any questions for what the content we've covered so far. And I know we've covered a lot in not a lot of time, but I do want to offer a lot of opportunity here for questions as we talk about migration paths. And there's some color coding here. So if you're on G Suite Basic, the equivalent product in both price and feature set is Google Workspace Business Starter. Okay, and if you do nothing at your first renewal after January 15th, 2021, the Google system will automatically tell us that you've been converted from G Suite Basic to Google Workspace Business Starter. And what does that January 15th date mean? It means that if your renewal date, if your contract year comes up between now and January 15th, you'll have, for that renewal, you'll have the option of continuing with G Suite Basic or whatever G Suite version you have, or making the move now to Google Workspace and the appropriate license there. If you choose to stay on G Suite, then a year from now is when you would make your migration. Now, Google, as I'll talk about towards the end, we've partnered with them. We're actually offering some incentives with some pretty significant discounting to encourage people to move to the Google Workspace SKUs and subscriptions, I should say, before the end of the year. But so from G Suite Basic, by default, you'd end up on Google Workspace Business Starter. Okay, now if you need additional storage for some of your users, that'll probably be the most common reason for someone on G Suite Basic to need to go to Google Workspace Business Standard would be for the additional storage, to go from that 30 gig per user on a per user basis to that 2 terabyte per user pooled. And again, we can mix and match the licenses within this business tier. Okay. For some people, if you're running G Suite Basic and you have some users on Vault, Vault is only available in the business tier with the Business Plus edition. So that would be the trigger that you would need one or more users or potentially all of your users licensed at the Workspace Business Plus. So if you currently have G Suite Basic for 20 users and 8 of them have Vault, we'd be looking at some mix of Google Workspace Business Starter and Standard for the 12 that don't have Vault, and we'd be looking at Google Workspace Business Plus for the 8 that do have Google Vault. And then in the green line really says, okay, for some companies, now's a good time to look at your use, how you're using G Suite today, how you might want to use the collaboration tools in the future, and if you want the additional security and compliance features, if you want some of the additional application features, we are seeing some folks on G Suite Basic looking to make the jump all the way up to Google Workspace Enterprise Standard. Okay, so a couple of questions have come in. So if a business, let me address them. I'll stop here and address some questions, and then we'll continue to move forward. So if a business is working with outside personal free Google users, does any of this change affect them? Okay, so if you're working with outside individuals who are on the free version of Gmail, this does not affect those users running Gmail. You will still be able to share information, email to and from. They can share information back with you. Their personal account is their personal account. It's not impacted by what you do in your domain. And so these changes only affect the business version of Gmail, which is formerly G Suite, now Google Workspace, and those paid licenses that you use within your domain with the added security, privacy, protection. The free Gmail accounts content is still scanned for advertising purposes. That's not the case in the paid versions. Next question is, how does Google Vault compare with tools like Backupify? If you have one, do you need both? Okay, so Google Vault, let me step back for those who are unaware. Backupify from Datto is a backup and restore service for G Suite. They also have versions for Office 365. And other tools like that, which would include Spanning Backup and Cloud Ally, you may have heard of. They were recently acquired. Those are backup and restore services. Google Vault, well, it is possible to restore data out of Google Vault. That's not the purpose or intent. Google Vault is a data archiving, retention, and e-discovery tool. That's it's actually specifically designed to meet the retention, legal hold, and information delivery requirements of a federal data subpoena. Okay, so Google Vault is about archive, e-discovery, retention, and compliance. And it's really designed for you to be able to keep data secure even after a user's deleted it, in line with your company's retention policies and or any government rules or industry rules and regulations you need to follow. When data comes out of Google Vault, it's most often exported along with an audit report that demonstrates that the data has not been tampered with. And so again, Vault is really there as an archive discovery tool for retention. It's not really designed to do recovery. So if you're worried about protecting yourself from someone accidentally deleting entire folder structure, Google Vault can restore those files and folders, yes, but it's going to restore them flat and you're going to lose any metadata. Whereas a backup restore utility can restore and retain the file and folder structure and address the issue of permissions. So we generally recommend backup, a tool like Backupify, Spanning, or Cloud Ally that does backup restore for everyone who runs G Suite. Google, Microsoft, all of the cloud providers work on a shared responsibility model. They back up and protect their systems to make sure the service is running, but the protection of your data is your responsibility. So just like you have a backup and restore service, hopefully, for your physical on-premise servers that you have or used to have, and even on your laptops or desktops, in many cases, you should have that service for G Suite. You need Vault if you have a need to archive and retain data for specific periods of time in a way that's tamper-proof or highly tamper-resistant, if not tamper-proof, and be able to put legal holds on elements of that data so that they don't get deleted as time expires, if there's a legal matter or personnel or policy matter underway, and the ability to export and deliver that data with audit reports to demonstrate that there's been no tampering. So Google Vault is not about backup and recovery. It's really for archive, retention, e-discovery, and delivery of data under e-discovery, whereas you should have a backup and restore. So the need for Vault is a bit more narrow than the need for a backup and restore utility. Sorry, I got a little long-winded there. If you are on G Suite Basic with more than 300 users and do nothing, what version of Google Workspace would you get moved to? So if you are on G Suite Basic with more than 300 users and you choose not to do anything before the end of this year, you would end up on Google Workspace Enterprise Basic because you have more than 300 users, and that is the lowest tier in the enterprise tier that allows more than 300 users. That said, Google is making that exception that would let you go to G Suite Business Starter up through the end of this year. We don't know, and I would not plan on them extending that into the first quarter of next year. We don't know if they're going to do it. They've told us no. In the past, they've told us they're not doing things they end up doing, but it's too, from our perspective, it's too financially risky to risk going from a $6 SKU to a $20 SKU on something that may or may not happen. So we would look to encourage you to make a decision and move before. Contact one of our, contact us. We'll get on the phone with you. We'll walk you through all the options so you fully understand. Next question is Business Plus and Starter Mix for Vault purposes only available to domains under 300 users. At this point, that is correct. We are looking to see if Google is willing to have an exception process as particularly for the government sector, as we've got there are many companies or many government organizations that would prefer to mix Business Plus and Starter because they have a high number of users but a relatively low need for Vault. And so we should definitely have a conversation. For the person who asked that question, we should definitely have a conversation if you're not already talking with our cloud advisors. The other thing that we are waiting for clarification on is we've got, particularly on the government side, we have some government entities with multi-year contracts, and Google has not given us definitive answers on how they're handling the licensing for those. And our hope and his expectation is that they would either allow the existing G Suite license to run the full suite, or they would move our customer into the appropriate Google Workspace licensing with no change in price, and honor the financial commitment of the existing contract. So we'll post more about that on our blog as that data comes to us and information comes to us from Google over the next few weeks. Okay, so we've answered a lot of questions here. Please keep them coming. G Suite Basic, again, you've got a number of options of where you're going to go. If you're currently running G Suite Business, you've got all the features of G Suite Basic. You've currently have unlimited storage, and you also have Vault. Those are the two big differentiators there. The third big differentiator is being shared drive. So the default move from Google's perspective for G Suite Business customers is into Google Workspace Business Plus. The vast majority of G Suite Business users don't have 5 terabytes of data per user in the aggregate. And so the data limitation of Workspace Business Plus is not an issue. Workspace Business Plus has shared drives and has Vault. The challenge, of course, is that when you go from G Suite Business to Workspace Business Plus, you're going from a cost of $12 per user per month to $18. It's a pretty significant increase, particularly since it's coming on the heels of Google's price increase that happened in April of 2019. So for companies who are looking to hold the line on price, you may actually, in Google's perception, ours it's a little different. In Google's perception, you might actually down license and have some of your G Suite Business customers who don't need Vault in place to go to Google Workspace Business Standard, which adds 2 terabytes of data in the aggregate to your data pool. You still have shared drives and all those permission capabilities. You don't have Vault. So it's less of a contribution to the data pool, the storage pool, and you don't have Vault for the standard. So some mix. And we expect most of our G Suite Business customers will do some mix of Workspace Standard, Business Standard, and Workspace Business Plus. Now, again, as we talk to our clients and we talk to our customers who are on G Suite Business, they're looking at the additional features and the additional security options in Google Workspace Enterprise Standard and Enterprise Plus. Beyond, even though they're not sure when they'll need it, the unlimited storage is attractive. And so we do see a fair number of our G Suite Business running customers interested in Workspace Enterprise Standard with some of the enhanced permissions, reporting, and application features. Very few, sort of below the dotted line there, are going all the way to Enterprise Plus, although we do have 1 or 2. And so the most likely path is that mix from G Suite Business is that mix of Google Workspace Business Standard and Google Workspace Business Plus. Any questions about, for those of you on G Suite Business, where you might see yourself ending up and how that might work? Okay, now we have a few folks on the session today who are customers of ours who are currently on G Suite Enterprise. The default move in Google's eyes is to Google Workspace Enterprise Plus. It's the most functionally equivalent, although we could see many of our G Suite Enterprise customers working well with the Google Workspace Enterprise Standard license or some mix of the two. And again, G Suite Enterprise is $25 per user per month. Google Workspace Enterprise Standard is $20. Google Workspace Enterprise Plus is $30. So you're going from the mid-range either up or down. Someone's asked for the price on Workspace Business Standard. That is $12 per user per month. And so I can, let me go back up to the pricing chart once again, right? So again, thinking about that migration path, if you're on, G Suite Basic, your pricing is $6 per user per month. That really maps one-to-one to the Business Starter Edition. Folks on G Suite Business at $12 per user per month are going to map to either Business Plus or a mix of Business Standard and Business Plus, depending on your need for, based on your need for Vault and potentially how much storage you need. So the question is, if we have G Suite Basic plan, will we keep the same features? Yes, you'll keep the same features if you move to Workspace Business Starter. And so that's the one thing that is most predictable and consistent, is that G Suite Basic and Google Workspace Business Starter Edition are the same price and the same functionality. It's when we start moving up the subscription options and between the business and the enterprise tier that the pricing and the feature set adapts quite a bit. Okay, so with those so what we have now through the end of the year is a couple of options. And depending on where you're starting and where you want to end up, we're able to secure some incentive discounts for moving now rather than waiting until your renewal date, as well as the ability to do a price lock. And so we can lock in pricing for 1 to 3 years. The price lock and your incentives are based on a 1, 2, or 3 year commitment. And let me be very clear and explain what that means. When you sign up for a 1 year commitment, and most of our customers are on annual plans, so they're used to this on a year, for the 1 year commitment, you're committing to the number of active users. You can always add users during that commitment, but you cannot reduce your paid user count. And so if you're a 60-person company and you make a 1 year commitment to that 60 users, and 3 months later, 2 people leave the company, you'll have 58 active users, 2 inactive accounts, but you'll still be you will have paid or will be paying for 60 users. If you're that 60 user company and your 60 users fine chugging along, and 6 months into your annual commitment, you add 2 people, you'll be prorated. We'll send you a prorated invoice for those other 2 additions. If 3 months later you then lose 4 people and you're down to 58, your commitment level has gone up to 62, and you'll have 4 unused licenses that you've paid for or are paying for if you're on monthly payments. And so it's, to understand the commitment, as far as your user count and your per user fees, your user count can go up during the commitment. It does not go back down. So think about that. It's an important consideration when you look at your the incentives and where you want to be, and whether you're willing to make a 1, 2, or 3 year commitment. Clearly, the longer the commitment, the higher percentage incentive discount we can get. So, for example, if you're on enterprise business and you're looking at a 3 year commitment, we can give you Google Workspace Business Plus. Instead of $18 per user, we can discount that down to the $12. Your pricing stays the same per user for a full 3 years. And so you've got 3 years of price lock and price protection at your current price, but you get the additional capabilities and features of Business Plus, and you avoid that, that increase from $12 to $18 for a full 3 years. So that gives you a sense of how how the discounts and the incentives work. If you're changing between equivalent or you're down licensing, there's no pricing incentive, but we can still get that price lock in place. Okay, so the question is, so there's no incentive to convert before the end of the year to get a better price if we do basic now and stay on Workspace Starter. Thank you, Denise. That's a great question. Correct. Google is not authorizing any pricing discounts for people who are on G Suite Basic now and choose to move or stay with Workspace Business Starter Edition. What you do get is price lock for the term of your commitment, which is 1 to 3 years. Now, as a company, Cumulus Global, if you're, regardless of what edition you're staying with or moving to, if you make any sort of commitment before 12/31 and you have other services, you add other services with us, whether it's our remote administration service that we launched earlier this year, that it also includes support, our support. If you look at any of our additional security and privacy tools or backup recovery tools that we've discussed earlier, we're offering discounts and price locks on those additional services and tools and capabilities, whether or not Google's offering a discount for there. So if you're on G Suite Basic and you're looking to, and you think you're fine there and you want to stay there and you want to move to Google Workspace Business Starter Edition, yes, your features and pricing will stay the same. If you choose to add any additional services, we're offering discounts anywhere from 10 to 35% on our professional services, support and admin services, and third-party tools and resources that we bring in to make sure your data is protected and your environment's safe and clean, etc. Okay, so another question about Vault and Backupify. So I did talk about if you have Vault, you still need Backupify. What about the opposite? If we have Backupify, do we need Vault? Does Backupify require Vault? So first and foremost, Backupify does not require Vault. Neither do Spanning or Cloud Ally, which we offer 3 different backup and restore services for G Suite and Google Workspace. We offer Backupify, Spanning, and Cloud Ally. Well, the products are very similar. There's some minor differences that in certain instances give us a preference for one over the other from a technical and data protection and services standpoint. If you're running Datto Backupify and doing backup and restore, do you need Vault? You do not necessarily need Vault. Whether or not you need Vault is really based on whether or not you need, because of laws and regulations or industry standards, or you want, because of internal policy, to guarantee data retention in an archive where you can discover past information and deliver that upon request. And so Vault is really there for archive retention and e-discovery. Most businesses that have Vault do so because there is a legal requirement for them to retain data and be able to produce it in response to a subpoena. Government entities generally use Vault because of requirements to adhere to with respect to sunshine laws or Freedom of Information Acts in every state and at the federal level. Businesses, we have many businesses that put in Vault because they want to be able to guarantee that if there's been any sort of harassment, as an example, using email or other technology within the environment, that even if the accused perpetrator deletes that information or those communications, that there's still a permanent record that can be searched and found. And another question about Backupify. Backupify, the question is I'll paraphrase the question. This is another good point. So Backupify also backs up on a limited basis. So where Vault captures everything, all activity in chats, documents, and email, backup utilities, backup anywhere from one, depending on the utility, between 1 and 3 times a day. So for example, Backupify will back up every account and service within your domain 3 times a day on a rotating schedule. So it is possible if you have Backupify that someone could set a bunch of chats and then delete them, and they would not get caught by the backup. So it's not a guaranteed image, whereas Vault, all of those chats would be caught and would be part of the archive and would be recoverable. Okay, so there's one other wrinkle in all of this, and for customers that have been with us back in our pre-Google days and our early Google days, when Google didn't have email encryption, archiving, or advanced threat protection for spam and virus, and we were using the Postini service. People who had archiving with Postini, when those accounts moved into what's now become Google Workspace, they were put in a license known as Vault Former Employee if they were no longer active email users. Those are free licenses, and Google supposedly started notifying all customers. We know that many of our customers never received notification from Google, and we're working on that the VFE licenses are going away. Those are going to transition to what's known as an archive user license. So archive user licensing for enterprise are available now. The AU business licensing is expected in the first quarter of 2021 sometime. And so the VFE free accounts are going to be, if nothing else is done, free VFE accounts will migrate into paid archive user licenses. Most of that will happen in 2021. There's certain customers where that's getting triggered early. You will get a notice from Google. Hopefully we get a copy of that notice as well. It'll be at least 60 days notice. If you get such a notice, please contact us immediately. Don't wait a day, don't wait a week, don't wait an hour. Contact us immediately so we can help you with that. Archive user licensing come at a price at $4 per user per month and $7 for business and enterprise respectively. If you have VFE licenses, there are other options as far as moving and maintaining that data. And so for folks who aren't familiar with the VFE licensing, the way Vault works is because Vault is an in-system archive. In order for Vault to maintain your archive, your account still has to exist. That's historically been the case. So if you deleted the live user, you would also delete everything they had in Vault. VFE, because when people came over from using Postini into the G Suite environment, they might have had archives for emails that were no longer active. Those became Vault Former Employee accounts. Archive user licenses are a way for you to maintain the archive of a user who's no longer with the company and delete their active G Suite account. So instead of maintaining, a $18 a month Business Plus account for a user for a person who's no longer with your company, you can move them into an archive user license at $4 per user per month and maintain that data as long as you want, delete it when you no longer need it. Similarly, at a slightly higher cost for the enterprise licensing. So it's actually giving some new capability and the ability to maintain archive data in Vault effectively for people who no longer have active G Suite accounts. Lets you lower your license count of active users or reuse those licenses, but still maintain the archive data for future e-discovery. And then there's a set of management utilities around that as far as managing your data retention and your data restoration, recovery, archive policies. So if you have Vault Former Employee licenses, we'll be in touch. We actually sent out an email about a week ago, maybe a little more than a week ago. People are not happy with the way Google is managing it. Google's heard they've changed some things. We'll be updating anyone with VFE licensing shortly as we're getting and have gotten new information from Google as well. So if you have VFE licensing, the action item is to call us. In fact, your action item right now, and from this workshop, is really to assess where you are. How are you using G Suite? Is it just an email tool, or are you using the collaboration fields, capabilities? Are you using Meets? Are you using all the features in Meets? Do you rely on those recordings? If you're using Meets, are you still using WebEx or GoToMeeting or Zoom or other paid services that you may not need? Can we eliminate that duplicate services and those additional costs? Are you happy with Drive and if you in the business edition of G Suite, shared drives? Is that meeting your needs, or do you still feel like you need to be paying for Dropbox for Business or Box or another file sharing service? Can we eliminate those? So let's look and have a brief conversation about how you're using your current G Suite licensing, the features and functions and the value it is providing, the value it can be providing, and potential cost savings for simplifying your environment. From there, we can then say, okay, if this is where you're at and this is where you think you're going to be, let's match you to the right tier, business or enterprise, and the right subscription or subscriptions that provide you those capabilities going forward at the lowest possible price. And let's do this before December 31st so we can do it at the lowest possible cost. The next step is to plan. Let's plan your move when we pull the switch and move you to Google Workspace. We'll get involved with you and talk about user education, because chances are they're going to have some new features and capabilities that might make them more productive, happier in the environment, and more effective in their day-to-day jobs. And we're going to talk about the enhanced administration, particularly since most of the business tiers and all of the enterprise tiers have many new data protection, security, and privacy controls. So we'll talk to you about getting you at least in a best practice setup, if not ongoing assistance with the enhanced and more robust administration of the environment. And the best way to contact us, and again, we'll open the floor to any other questions people have. You can contact us at info@cumulusglobal.com. Our toll-free and standard POTS numbers are there on the screen. You can also contact me directly. I don't have an administrative assistant who screens emails and calls. I will tell you that while my phone number is on the screen, you are best to send me an email. I will answer you directly. I may connect you with another member of my team as well if my schedule demands that. But you will get a response at this point. So much activity is happening, it's taking a half day to a day, but we will get back to you. We'll get you on the phone, or we'll get you in a live chat, and we'll figure out where you're at, where you're going, and what the next step is. And so as I look, there are a couple more questions coming in. So if you were to make a decision, the question is, if you were to make a decision to move to Google Workspace before 12/31, but your current subscription runs through June 1st, does your renewal date change, or does it start at 6/1? Your renewal date would change to when we make the conversion. If you're on our annual prepaid plans, part of that conversion, we would obviously credit you the cost of any unused portion of your existing subscription and apply it to the new annual subscription. So, for example, if you make the change on December 1st, which is exactly halfway through the year, and you're moving from G Suite Basic to G Suite Workspace Business Starter, where the pricing doesn't change, we would effectively credit you a half year of the G Suite Basic service and charge you for a year of the Starter service. You'd effectively only be paying for the additional 6-month and term, and your renewal date would then become 12/1 going forward. So if you have other questions about that, let me know. Okay, and so now it's time to wrap up. I really want to appreciate folks hanging in with me. A lot of content. This is one of the few presentations where I didn't spend a lot of time or didn't have room to go to find those fun images and plop them in to give you a little visual diversity. A lot of text, a lot of bullet points. So I appreciate you hanging in with me. It's an important subject. Our goal is to make sure that you have the features and functions you need, first and foremost, as well at the best possible price, at the lowest possible cost. We want this to have the greatest value for you, both in how you currently and how you want your business to run, and what efficiency and level of collaboration and tools you want to use, but also with respect to your budget. We're a small business ourselves. We understand how small businesses work and how we think, and how important it is to make sure that we don't feel we're just spending more and more money for the same old thing. And so I appreciate you hanging in through the topic. Feel free to ask additional questions, but we will wrap it up. I want to thank everyone who's joined me live, as well as give you a thank you if you're watching this as a recording. So thank you very much, and have a great day and have a great week.